Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today, I bring you André, Kajlich. Do you get motivation, clarity, or inspiration from the Success Through Failure podcast? Then don't be so selfish. Share the motivation with your friends. Go to jimharshawjr.com/share, and there you'll find a simple page with just 3 buttons. One to share the podcast on Twitter, one for Facebook, and one for LinkedIn. Click any of the buttons and you'll have the option to either share the pre-written tweet or message or rewrite your own. That's it. Super simple. It'll just take a few seconds. Unless you're selfish and you want to keep all of this awesome inspiration to yourself, go ahead and let your friends in on the secret. They'll thank you. And if nothing else, you'll have something cool to talk about the next time you get together. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/share. In 2003, André was a charismatic 23-year-old student attending his father's alma mater in the city of Prague. One night, partying with friends into the early hours, he wound up on the tracks in front of an oncoming subway train. His devastating injuries required that both legs be amputated above the knees, and after 3 weeks in a medically induced coma, he awoke to an insanely altered reality. He's since become an ultra-endurance pioneer, a world champion paratriathlete, and an Ironman World Champion, and the only wheelchair athlete to finish an ultra triathlon. As a matter of fact, he's finished 4. He finished the Race Across America, handcycling 3,100 miles in just 12 days, sleeping 90 minutes a night to make it from Oceanside, California to Annapolis, Maryland. And during the Brazil135 UltraMarathon, André completed 135 miles through the jungle in jungle terrain in 62 hours, sometimes crawling along the forest, dragging his wheelchair behind him. And he was not only the first person in a wheelchair to finish these, he was the first even to ever attempt them. He is, without question, an inspiration. André, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, thanks for making time for this, man. Let's just kind of zoom out and start from there. Tell us a little bit about your background, kind of where you grew up, and kind of the short version of how you got from there to here.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I grew up in a small town feeling suburb north of Seattle. And yeah, I mean, I had a pretty idyllic childhood, just, playing a whole bunch of different sports, played violin when I was little. And yeah, I mean, I just had a really, wonderful family. We were, all happy. I had some, sort of early, I guess the first time that life sort of hit me when my dad started suffering from effects of pulmonary heart disease. That was something that's in his, homeland of Slovakia had started with strep throat, and it wasn't, treated correctly and spread to his heart.
Wow.
And it didn't really creep up until he was well into his 30s. But, basically as a child, I just remember the first time being scared, truly scared. And he went in and had a couple open heart surgeries where they replaced his, mitral valve with mechanical valves. And yeah, so I mean that left a mark, but it also, I think we can probably circle back to that later. But he did, just he didn't complain. He always, did the things he could do, and lived a pretty, active life still. He had to cut back on some things. We weren't snow skiing together anymore by that point. But in any case, I went to high school and then just kind of started bouncing around from there. I definitely got into partying and, just me and my buddies, it was like drinking was just the thing that was on our mind all the time, how to go, hang out, have fun. And really, I think I found myself searching for something more. I left for Czech Republic to study at Charles University, which is, where my father studied. He studied medicine there in the 60s. And, I think I was really doing what I wanted at that point and sort of taking, my life in sort of my hands and was loving every minute of it. And it was really just bad habits kind of stuck with me, and was partying with friends, had all these European friends around me. And it was about 5 months into living over there and studying after a typical but very late night out. We had breakfast and I headed my way home. And my friend Riku from Finland headed his way home. And that was, where sort of the story ended for me until 3 weeks later when I came to in a hospital. I had been run over by a subway train. Nobody knows, precisely how I ended up on the tracks, but whether I fell asleep or stumbled off or what. There were few strange circumstances around it, but whatever the case, I put myself in this situation where I wasn't in control, and paid a heavy price for that mistake. And so anyways, I survived, thankfully, but things were pretty severe. And when I woke up, it was one thing to come to and realize what was going on and that I had lost my legs, but it was, another to just still, be struggling to live and be uncertain about that. It was crazy times.
So tell us more about that. Like, you wake up and life has dramatically changed. Like, we said in the bio, this insane reality is altered reality for here and for the rest of your life. What was that like, and how did you deal with that?
There were many things about how it all happened that I think I was quite fortunate for. But it was, so surreal and strange. But I woke up with my, entire, family around me. It wasn't a moment of bolt right up in bed and, oh my God, I don't have legs. There's really a process of kind of coming to and, being, conscious and unconscious and having weird dreams, and sort of the pieces started coming together. I remember my mom talking to me. At some point, my feet felt all gnarled, and I was asking her to clip my toenails because they felt like they had grown immensely long. And that's kind of when she hit me with it. André, you don't have any feet, and you've had a horrible accident, and this is what happened. So right away it was just madness. It was so strange. I was going through these because I had all these fluids in my lungs. I had punctured my lungs. All the ribs on my right side had broke, and I had lacerated my liver. So I had massive infections, and I would go into these feverish states. I'd wake up super cold, just shivering. And then as the day progressed, go to 105 fever. And they were really just trying to cool me and keep me alive. I was on like 5 antibiotics. And so it was just this churning kind of chaos of the ICU, for 2 months. It progressively got better. And I had friends visit, my family talked me through it. And there was this real, sense of sort of optimism about, what I could kind of go forward and do. I was asking my mom, what will I do with my life? And, having all of that support around me, kept me from kind of going too dark. And I also was just like trying to deal with like this crazy itchy skin. And then they'd wake me up in the middle of the night to glass bottles and restocking behind me. And then some lady that was in a car accident would come in screaming at 4 a.m. with, broken bones all over her body. It was madness. And that kind of kept me from, I guess, diving too deep into what this new reality meant for André and what life was going to be like. So it wasn't until I got out of the hospital, that things, started going a bit dark.
And can you take us further down that road? So things got darker after you left the hospital? I mean, because now obviously we look at your life and you're doing incredible things, but tell us about that dark period.
I think it'd be pretty impossible to just kind of snap out of something like that. Be like, okay, this is my life now. I'm going to make the most of it.
Yeah, sure.
And when you're in or when I was in the hospital, things kind of improved, and then you start feeling okay. And that's just a huge relief in itself. And then, I came
improved in terms of like, you're going to live and that sort of thing.
Improved in that, like, they take the feeding tube out, they take the trachea, breathing apparatus out of my throat, and I can talk now. And then I'm sitting up in bed and I'm eating and I'm like brushing my own teeth, and it's kind of fun because like I'm relearning, how to do everything. There's just these little moments that kind of made you smile. As I transferred to the US, kind of put you on a stretcher on a plane, knock you out for the trek. It was straight to another ICU. I was, just barely stable enough to really transport. And then I did 3 weeks of inpatient rehab, and by the inpatient rehab part, I've got my earphones in and I'm, cruising around the hotel or the hospital late at night, listening to music. And, it's, you start to get in the groove, and it's kind of like your new home. And I was excited to get out, but it was when I got out that all of a sudden, I'm back in my parents' house. Everything is difficult. Going to the bathroom is difficult. I had this colostomy, at the colostomy bag at the time. My injuries were kind of so high up, so I've lost one leg. It's called a hip disarticulation. There's no femur, so there's just pelvis. So all the way up at the hip, and then the other side is above the knee. So it's really a high level amputation. Started learning about, what that would look like. I figured, okay, they make prosthesis, and you just kind of replace your legs and you're on your way. Well, I was getting very pessimistic outlook from, doctors, the prosthetists, neighbors. Everybody seemed to, agree that at this level, it wasn't really going to be possible to walk. And so that started to sink in, like, okay, my life is, really different. And I wanted to walk. I was just worried that, these guys were right, and it just wasn't physically going to be possible. So I was kind of fighting with those types of things. I was worried about ever being happy again. And I just kept sinking into these, these fits of crying and sorrow and anger, and just asking, all these questions without answers, but certainly without anything that I could do about them. So like, why did this have to happen? Why can't I go back? Why can't it be different? And I would just dwell on that, hoping and wishing that the case wasn't the case. And it was tough. And it kind of felt comforting at the same time to just cry it out. So it was holding me back, and I couldn't just move forward, even though I was kind of making progress health-wise, and we started working on prostheses. Everything just was more challenging than what I wanted at that point.
It's so interesting, and I want to just share with the listeners right now. It's like you read this bio of a guy who has this tragic accident, and now he's running these ultra endurance races and doing all these amazing things, and he lives happily ever after, right? It's like there's this period in between of struggle and setback and failure and adversity and sorrow and tears and crying and grieving that we don't see, right? That doesn't come out in the bio, but that comes out. It's coming out now, André, in your story. And I appreciate you sharing all this with us, because I think everybody can relate to that messy middle, that hard part, right? That challenge. Obviously, I don't think at your level, right? Most of us haven't experienced anything like that, but it's amazing to see that you did get through that.
If I can add, I think it's really important for people, one, not to miss kind of what you go through to get, to sort of quote unquote the level of success that I've achieved. But I think it's just as important to realize that that's always the case. I mean, now it might look like, I'm this rad dude going out there and taking on these monster challenges, and, everything's groovy, but there's still so much, in those same things of setbacks and failures and struggle. Like, I have accepted that it will always be a struggle for me. It's great when the struggles are, really working towards what you want, and they're completely different than the struggle I faced back then. But being okay with the adversity. Like, it's not just going to click and all of a sudden it's smooth sailing and you're this huge success. You better be committed to, to taking on whatever comes on. And there are a lot of difficult times. I mean, I still, like, this is always my go-to, and it may seem so lame, but like, I still struggle to get out of bed for, workouts. And for me to work and fit it all in, like, there's some early mornings and I blow them all the time. And I, come up with ways that have improved my success rate, but those things don't just become automatic. And so anyways, it's not easy.
Yeah, that's the stuff that I love to get, and I love to hear André be like, and again, addressing the listener, like he said, I've accepted that it will always be a struggle. Have you accepted that it's always going to be a struggle, right? I mean, your struggle's different than André's. It's totally unique to you and your scenario, your situation, whether it's your job or your relationship or some illness or something you have going on in your life. Like, have you accepted it's always going to be a struggle, and it's just going to be hard, right? I mean, that's achieving anything meaningful is going to be hard. And André, I appreciate that you said you struggle to work out, and we're talking to a guy right now who's done just this superhuman feats, and it's like, man, this guy must just love working out. It's so easy. He just pops right out of bed and goes and works out, and he's just so happy doing it all the time, and he's smiling, and it's all great. But it's not, right? It's hard. It's a struggle for you, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I love riding my bike, but when you're sort of in the comfort of your home and you're facing, an 8-hour ride or 2-hour ride or whatever it is, yeah. It's often easier to just not go. And, I think it is important to sort of call it a struggle. You could also call it a challenge. I think about being out there on a hill and I'm in a workout. Then the challenge is great. You're like, I'm going to get to the top of the hill. It's not even that far away. It's going to feel good. But then sometimes it hits me that it's like all these things are challenges. And if I could just have that attitude towards them, of that proud charging up the hill, kind of feeling, and take that into the little things, like the challenge of figuring out how you're going to make sure you get out to the gym or to the office on time or whatever it is, because when you have that bring it on, attitude, then you're willing to come up with solutions, I just, keep throwing different ways until I find the way that works. So anyways, yeah, that attitude helps a lot.
André, I think we would all be amazed if your story ended with you recovered to the point where you learned how to walk again, and now you're living a productive life. You have a job, and that's amazing, right? That alone is amazing. And then it's like, okay, well, and this guy, even maybe he does like some local triathlons, like, wow, holy cow, like amazing, right? But you're doing things that nobody's ever attempted before, ever. Why? I mean, why do you go that far?
I think, if I go back to the accident, there's a lot of things sort of not thrown at me, but suggested that I do. A lot of them were physical, sports that I should try and do. I was, in my heart, all I wanted was to get back to Prague. I was having such a great time, learning so much, and I wanted to resume that. And it seemed, maybe that wasn't the easiest thing to shoot for. A lot of times it seemed, maybe, I don't know about impossible, but, ridiculous, if anything. And I just kind of made up my mind that was going to be success for me. I think picking up where I left off after this huge thing, like that worked in my mind. And kind of since then, I've just tried to do a better job of going where I'm pulled. And, for whatever reason, once I kind of got into sports again, I was always pulled by something else. So I went and did this charity triathlon that Challenge Athletes Foundation puts on in San Diego. And that's where I kind of met the sport. A couple amputees I had met after returning from Prague, because I did eventually go back and resume my studies. So I was there for another 3.5 years after being home for about 1.5 years in sort of recovery. And when I came back, I didn't exactly have plans, but I was introduced to triathlon through these guys I had met. And I wanted to get stronger and better fitness because, walking with legs and getting around was difficult and took a lot of energy. And I knew as I aged, it would only get more difficult. But in any case, after that triathlon, I looked up online, what next could I do? And I saw Kona, the Ironman World Champion.
That was the what's next.
That was the what's next. So, it was October.
That's the World Championship Ironman.
It was the charity triathlon was in October, and by the next October, I had finished Kona, and
wow,
and that could have been enough, or let's do more triathlons, and I did, but I was always sort of pulled towards getting out there and adventuring. And one of the things for me is like driving by a forest and and just wanting that urge to put on a backpack and just kind of disappear for a week.
Yeah, I have that too.
It's not impossible, I would say, at this point, but it's very less feasible, and so I just was drawn towards whatever was the next step towards that adventure. And I've just continued to follow what I'm pulled towards. I think we are all, no matter what, like if you seem to have no ambition, you just sit around your house, like I'm pretty sure that everybody has that nagging thing that they just want to do, no matter how crazy or simple it might be, that they're just not getting around to doing. And what I found is that when you go and do those things, the satisfaction, the growth, the leveling up. I was never aiming to go do Race Across America. I was aiming to get around the 2.8 mile lake by my house, and that sort of mentality of just following what I wanted to do has led me here, and it's awesome.
So I want to break that down for the listener. It's we all have that nagging thing inside of us that we want to achieve, right? It's maybe you call it a hope, maybe you call it a dream, maybe you've gone as concrete and you call it a goal. And a lot of people won't make it a goal because it's scary, it's intimidating. We risk failure, we risk embarrassment. But you don't have to set out to achieve the whole thing, right? Or you don't have to set out to achieve the whole thing right away or right now or in the next year or 18 months or 5 years or 10 years for that matter. But you take one step. You do the next thing, right? And it's, André, it sounds like that's what you've done, is you've taken the next step. You've moved forward. You did one triathlon and then the next one and the next one. You just kind of continued, and now you're at this point where you're world class.
Yeah, when I set out to do Race Across America, I would have lost a lot of heart if I knew it was going to take me 3 years and three qualification attempts to get there. I kind of thought of the idea and I was going to go do it that spring. And I think a lot of times that's a big part of the challenge is impatience and, wanting it fast. And a 5-year plan seems way too long, especially when there's kind of baby steps to get you there. And you don't get the returns, whatever they are, if it's the weight loss or the money or, the leveling up, that progress happens, and it's amazing what you can accomplish. But it's like looking back, once I finished RAM, that 3-year wait was only a good thing. It wasn't painful, and it was well worth, if I could have spoken to the André at the start that might have not even tried because it was going to take so long. I don't know how I would have hammered that home, but if I just could have, that's all you need. So impatience is the thing that, that I think hurts me the most. And I think just by doing and not worrying so much about how quick it's going to come, or just believing that it will, and that the journey, no matter what it is to get there, is going to be great. It's going to be life. And, that's kind of my attitude these days, is it's all experience, and life is experience. So try to make the most of every day, and it's going to be a good life.
You've achieved amazing things since the accident. We all want to achieve amazing things. We all have these goals or hopes or dreams or wishes. Do we have to have a tragedy happen to us before it lights a fire underneath us?
No, I mean, I don't think you do. It is really, really difficult to learn lessons without experiencing, the things firsthand. So for me to say, I the first time I went to Home Depot, some guy gave me a car with hand controls. And so I was working on a project, and I went to Home Depot, and it was like the first time out on my own, and I'm in a wheelchair, basically a guy like, almost cut off at the waist, and I'm rolling in, and like I paused at the two big doors as they, slide open. And I just kind of thought, like, how must I look? And, I just kind of that, I don't know, not really ashamed, but just total concern with what other people are going to think or say or, feel when they see me. And then I just, was like, well, shit, if I'm going to go out and do stuff, like, I just have to go do it. And this little thing is going to hold me back, but really, I want to live. So I got to go in. All right. So this is kind of like a body issue and confidence. And it's really hard to just tell somebody that, for them to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the, beach in my swimsuit and not care about what other people think. There's, he's right. There's not lasers in their eyes, and it doesn't affect me, and I just got to live. And that's very liberating, but it's hard to just say it for someone to suddenly change their whole mentality towards it or the way they feel. However, I do think that just by challenging ourselves, and even if it's something as simple as that, going to the beach in your swimsuit, that you can build up to that. And just by the little feelings of progress and liberation and things you get, you can get there. And the thing that I always say is, it's like by digging in the dirt that I discover the most. And I learned so much and grew so much through the tragedy that I wanted more challenges, and I've gone and found those. And I've learned a lot from, the race in Brazil in the jungle, and they've all kind of combined in a way to get me where I am. And it's not all just because of the accident. I mean, you are absolutely not going to get smacked by a train and it all makes sense. That's not what happened. It was a long, slow process of me just, going inward, working on it, thinking through it, having breakthroughs, small epiphanies, but it's not like it just clicked because of, one big accident. You just have to be dedicated to not to figuring it out, to looking within you, coming up with answers. I do a lot of writing, do a lot of thinking, and I'm always entertained by it. I think enjoying that process of learning and growing is the most important part.
Yeah, and so for the listener, again, sorry, André, I keep kind of switching back from you. I'm talking to the listener again now.
Because you need to unscramble what I've just done each time. So I appreciate it. I just want
to take it further. You're laying it out perfectly for us. And it's like, so what, like for the listener, like what is that first challenge for you? What is the equivalent of rolling up to the door of Home Depot and looking at those big doors and going, oh man, do I want to do this? Right? I mean, looking back, André is like, okay, that was just, he did it. He's much further beyond that now, but right? That's where it starts though. That's where it started. And now he's now doing, things that humans probably shouldn't even be able to do. Right. And he's doing these superhuman things. But that's where, so for you, the listener, if you're on the treadmill or on your commute or whatever it is, hit pause right now just for about 10 seconds and think like, and I want you to say out loud to yourself, what is the first thing? Like, what's the one challenge? What's the thing that I fear, that I'm afraid of, that I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to fail. I'm afraid to try. I'm afraid to have that conversation. Whatever it is, hit the pause button, think about what it is, and say out loud that I'm going to do it. Okay, now you just did that, I hope, and now you're back. And so you've said out loud you're going to do it, and you're committed to that. So that's what we need. We need that level of clarity sometimes to go, okay, this is the next step for me, or this is the first step for me. So André, are we capable of more? Like, do you look around at people, and maybe even your past self, do you feel that we are capable of more? I think we all want to know that we are, and I'm maybe handing you a softball of a question, but I think it's something that's worth addressing. Like, are we capable of more, and how do we pull that out of ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, the whole drive back across the country from Race Across America, and like riding your bike across the country in a race, like, there's some impressive qualities to that, but that race is insane. I mean, you go, like, I went off the start, I rode my bike 24 hours straight, took a 30-minute nap, and then we rode for another 15 hours to about 4 a.m., sort of the next, day and a half.
That's nuts.
And
how far do you get? Let's say, okay, so 24 hours plus another 15 hours. Do you remember how far across the country do you get at that point?
Well, we left from Oceanside. We were already well into Arizona by the time I took my first 30-minute nap. I think in 24 hours, I'm covering like 300 miles, something like that, especially at the start where you're a bit fresh. And, then the next 15 hours, I'm trying to think where I went down the first night, but, we were probably something like 450, just a little over that miles into the race.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No,
that was
fine.
I was just curious.
And then I took a 90-minute sleep, and that's what, I did every 24 hours, for at least the next 5 days or so. And then we started supplementing with some 30-minute naps, but, basically, 90 minutes a night of sleep. And the van would pull off the road at 4 a.m. They strip me down, throw me in back, start a timer for 90 minutes. At the end of that timer, click on, and I'm down the road. No sitting around, nibbling on a snack and chit-chatting. It was pretty, it's pretty hardcore. And just to go through that for, 12 days, the whole ride home, I was just blown away by, human potential. And not because I was so impressed that I could do that race, but like anybody could do that, that anybody can do that race at all. And I do think most people are capable of that race. I also think that race is just scratching the surface of what, we're really capable of. And I still wish for myself that I would just kind of get it even more and really find, my own potential. I'm okay with the fact that, never going to get there. It is already really amazing what we can do. And I just want to see more and more of that. But I also acknowledge that it isn't easy. As simple as some of the answers are, it's really difficult to step out of your comfort zone. Whether it's having a conversation that you just don't want to have with somebody, or if it's, I don't know, talking like asking for a raise at work, or, again, going to the beach in your bikini when you're, you want to, if nobody else is there. But like those things and stepping out of your comfort zone they feel impossible, right? Like it's that feeling that to just like step out there, it's almost like you're on the 40-foot ledge to jump into the water, and it's just like, just go. And you can't, those kind of challenges present themselves, all sorts of other challenges with life and family and health. So I know that the challenges are big, but it all comes down to this little something in our mind that shifted the right way or seen in the right light just makes sense. And the mindset you take into those things. For me, for example, when I was 10 months after my accident. I've got a night in another town with friends. I was in my own room and just crying to myself again. I had just started walking with prosthetics, I had 2 forearm crutches, and I could kind of get around. And still, I was just wishing that things were different over and over again. And for whatever reason, I think it was because I wanted to have a good life still so bad that I was like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I just kind of came up with the solution, and whatever it takes is to just move forward with this, stop living in this place of sorrow over things you can't control anymore, and take full care of those, things that you can control, and just try your best, try your best on prosthetics, try to go have a happy life. And if you can just accept this simple thing, that's going to give you the best shot of actually being happy. I can't guarantee it's going to work, but I know it is the best chance to just let go and move forward. And I think probably for a lot of things, that's the simple answer, is to try your best and let go of the things that are clouding it all up that you can't do anything about anyways. And that's served me very well.
Yeah. And for the listener, again, take that story that André just told us and put it in your own words. How does that work in your own life, right? Like taking that next step and just committing to something and something that's hard and doing your best, whatever that is for you. So, André, is this why you're attempting now the 5.8 global adventure? Can you tell us what that is and why you're doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 5.8 global venture is, so Charlie Ingle, who is an amazing ultra runner, and he's best well known for, I think, having successfully run across the entire Sahara Desert. I think that was 2006 or thereabouts, and 4,500 miles, like through the sands from Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea. Two other runners. And we met back in 2013 on a dirt road in Brazil, which is a very romantic place to come across another, kindred spirit adventurer. And we remained friends. And he shared one of his concepts, which was to trek from the lowest point on the planet to the highest. So that's the Dead Sea to Mount Everest. And kind of through our planning, that evolved into the adventure to go from the lowest point to the highest on every continent. Part of that was because I just didn't have the mountaineering experience. Charlie was probably already up to the task. But the idea was, well, this is a big, never been done before adventure that we'd love to take on. And, I can kind of build my experience and all the engineering that we would need to do along the way. Because, some of the mountains like Kilimanjaro are not, too difficult. It's not technical. It's a big mountain, high elevation, but otherwise it's a kind of a hike. And so, it's just it brings together so many of the things that I want. I've also, really had this goal of helping change perceptions in other parts of the world for what life can look like for somebody that has a disability. A lot of places there's really no hope. There's no societal support. In some places they're seen as cursed. And in places like Kenya, kids born with special needs aren't even registered as, national citizens and not seem worth it. And their moms are seen as cursed. And it's really horrible, especially when I consider, a lot of those are just people just like me. And I'm so lucky to have had, a family and a community and, really an entire country that sees me in a light that is supportive. And, that I've gotten so much help along the way that I just would not have the quality of life that I have in many other parts of the world. So, that, and then being the first, to do something that big and physical, as somebody that's in a wheelchair is kind of got its meat claws into me, and I just can't let go. So there's actually, this will be the first time I talk about it. So it might I don't know, it might even be too early, but I might stumble through this a bit. Charlie and I were working towards going to Africa in September. That is not going to happen together. We had some challenges, bringing the fundraising together. Charlie's going to still try to head to Africa in September and go from Lake Assal in Djibouti to Kilimanjaro. And I wish him the absolute best. I've had a chance to kind of reconsider how I'm going about it. And, it's been positive because I have a little bit of a different idea of how I want to do it. And so I'm just kind of formulating that, and we'll see if I can make it happen. But there's so much going on in life and so many opportunities and, infinite cool things to try to go make happen that I'm not quite sure what it looks like yet. But I just wanted to be, straightforward about what this looks like. So if you want to follow 5.8 Adventure, look up Charlie Ingle or go to 5.8 Project. The 5 and the 8 are numbers. Everything else is written.com. And, it's awesome. Charlie's an incredible human, and he's smart and he's funny, and he stands for, all the things that I do too. So he has my deepest, my deepest interest in following the journey. That's what he has.
Awesome. And by the way, for the listeners, we do have Charlie Ingle coming on the show too at some point. So look forward to talking to him about that as well. And so, André, can you tell us about what habits you feel like you have or have had over the years that set you apart? Habits that have helped you achieve success?
Yeah. Let's see. I probably have more bad habits than good ones. And I think gosh, whatever it is that's helped me take advantage of the good habits, and still kind of not give up on the bad ones. I mean, I think there's sort of the line of thought to just, ignore your weaknesses and run with your strengths, because that's, those strengths are what's going to take you to success. It's gotten me in trouble when I've totally ignored the weaknesses. My organization, I have really big swings in sort of motivation, or at least what it looks like in practice, and in making progress in certain things. I have this switch that can get flipped to on, and it's like, doesn't matter how much work, doesn't matter how hard, doesn't matter how long I'm on this dirt road, I'm going to finish this thing. And, finding all of the ways to tap into that switch is kind of key for me. And when it's off, I can look pretty lethargic. I mean, I think that's really important, that I can be just as lazy as freaking anybody out there. It's that I try to be as quick as I can to recognize it and start working on getting, back moving, especially towards a big goal, because it's really hard to pull off, big things. And every day that you're sitting around is at least often that much less likely that it's gonna work out. But I do, I have a habit of waking up and writing. I try to make that the very first thing that I do. I don't know who I was listening out there that talked through the creativity you have in the morning, and how like zero screen time, don't start with your email, don't start with social, just sit down and write. And so I'll make a quick espresso, sit down. Sometimes I have planned from the night before what I want to write, and I just write a sentence, write about that one time, or write a fictional story about a lady in the sea, some weird stuff like that. Or something will just pop in my mind to write about, or nothing will. And I just sit there until something does that I feel like it's worth writing about. And that always happens pretty quickly. I think that habit is one of the most important things that I could do, because I think it's a lot like conversations we're having right now. I often don't know what I think, until I start talking about it with somebody. And it's kind of a willingness to sound stupid or be wrong. I think conversations are just so important, especially for like society today, to be able to have, and not vilify the other person, but try to make progress. I think both people have to be willing to make progress and see things a different way. But when I'm writing, it's me having a conversation with myself. So it's kind of the same end, the same results as far as learning and what I think, but I'm just doing it by myself.
I love that you said, I often don't know what I think until I start talking about it. And I think there's so much value in that, right? Whether you're having that conversation out loud with somebody, a close confidant, or journaling or writing. I think it's such an important habit. So thanks for sharing that, André.
Yeah. Actually, if I can just add, I might have just forgotten.
Please.
I think we often don't know. And so a lot of times we just leap to what we've heard. I think that's maybe where that comes from. And then you kind of quickly marry to that because now you've said it as what you think. I think, kind of political or other kind of conversations around that probably are the strongest moment of it. And for me to learn what I think by talking, I really have to be okay with sort of vulnerability and just being honest, about what I totally don't know. So it's a good point to make that caveat. Like everything I've said so far, it's like, I don't know if that's right. I don't know if it's the best for you. I don't think any of us, really know what the right answer is. I mean, in a lot of cases, there just aren't right and wrong answers. And, thinking it through is the best shot we have at making the one that has at least the best shot of working. So that's all I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point. André, can you tell us about a time where you failed? Tell us about a time where you failed, and as a result, you felt that hopelessness, that self-doubt that comes from failure. And, I think you probably shared a little bit about how to overcome it, but can you tell us about a time where you failed and how you overcame it?
So I'm going to jump jump to one that I've put some thought into. I mean, I've had so many, so many times where I failed, and then it's just so disheartening. But I think one of the ones that's really made an impact is the first time I went out, I was going to try to qualify for RAM. And again, this is, racing failure. There's other life out there, but.
And RAM is Ride Across America.
Yeah,
right?
Race Across America. Which is funny because I was just having a conversation with someone the other day who was talking about his buddy who had ridden across the country. And so I was like, oh yeah, I did this race across the country. And how long did your friend take? And of course, I know I did it faster, right? So I'm kind of, I'm poking for a reason.
Loaded question.
And yeah, so he actually calls him up, and we're chatting with kind of a group at this point. And so he's like, oh yeah, okay. And then he tells me, oh, it took him 93 days.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, that's sweet. Tell me I did 12. And
probably 93 is probably a little more normal, but yeah.
That would certainly be a bit of a difference between a ride across the country and a race across the country. But
sure.
In any case, to show how naive I was trying to qualify for Race Across America, which is in June, in May. So the month before, I have done some Ultraman. I haven't done any 24-hour plus cycling races. I've done some like that race in Brazil and some off-road stuff. But in any case, I'm out there riding. We had made a big push kind of in the lead up to get sponsors. And, I really was dedicated to being this badass cyclist and go out and take this all on. And Race Across America is extremely expensive. I mean, maybe 20 grand is the cheapest I've ever really heard of anybody taking it on. Closer to, 40, 50 would be typical for a solo. There's a big crew out there and a lot to to pay for. So in any case, you got to make something happen to make that happen, unless you just have the funds. So I'm out there during this race. None of that has gone well. I've paid sort of my own way to this race and to qualify. And it's a 400-mile race. Start in Oceanside, you cross the Coast Range, go around the Salton Sea, practically out to Arizona, and then back. You have 32 hours to finish. So I'm about 100 miles in, and I'm already kind of over it. I just started thinking about where my priorities are at, what I should be doing in life. It's not going well as far as making this any kind of a oversized hobby that can pay for itself, let alone, getting out there and being a speaker and all of these things that I'm kind of rationalizing to my wife why I should do this. And even though for me, I just want to go out and do it. And I really thought okay, maybe RAM's not even something I want to do. I'm out here on the bike and it hurts, and it's in this moment, it's not fun. So, it took me a while, but it was until 28 hours in that I quit. And I was something like 55 miles from the finish, and I had crossed the Coast Range, and in my mind, the profile was all downhill from there. And I came down this little descent. Everything hurt, and the van is headed up the next hill. And I mean, in my mind, it's just there was no more climbing. It was all easy from here. And I pulled off the side of the road. I kind of fell asleep a bit, and the van came to me. We had a media van also. And I was like, I'm done. I'm over it. I don't care. I don't need to prove myself to anybody. These were all the things that I was saying to them. And I had really quit around that 100-mile mark. And it kind of just took that long to sort of manifest. I've since heard about a lot of those, where even in Race Across America, someone quits on the first day, but it takes them 5 days to actually do it.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that I was just there's a lot going on. But you make these emotional decisions and then kind of rationalize them. So the whole, I don't need to prove this to anybody. I don't care about this. It doesn't matter. Was all in the moment, rationalizations for just get me out of here. And already the next day, it really started to affect me, and I was really disappointed. I hadn't not finished anything. I'd missed some cutoffs, but I'd always go to the finish line. And, I was kind of sort of made up a decision, to myself that any of these things that I think I've come up with while I'm in the process of working towards something, I'm going to take them with me to the finish line. You can learn some really valuable insights, but once I've committed to really finishing something, I try to finish it and then digest what I've learned and make important, changes in life and direction at those points. I think there'll clearly be times where that's maybe not the best way to go in some like huge business venture where like a pivot is necessary or whatever it is. But as much as I can, I try to tune in with the thought process and whether I am just rationalizing an emotional decision or it's really a decision to make. I think things like sleeping on it and mulling it over and writing about it would really help in the times where you don't know. But you can often realize when you're just messing with yourself, and your brain is really, really good at it. So tapping into that, learning from it, made that failure, one of the best lessons ever. And I do think, like a big, your whole podcast, like it's totally on point, with success from failures. But I think another way of looking at failure is you just aren't going to set out to do anything without failure being part of it, and you can always kind of spin a failure into not being a failure. So I don't want to like label things as failure, but like you're going to have disappointments, you're going to have setbacks, you're going to have things that you mess up anytime you go out and doing something. So you just kind of got to accept that up front. There's some things that I'm going to go try to do that aren't going to go that well. And that's just part of being human.
Wow. Yeah. Excellent advice. I love that, you just wrote that down. You're not going to set out to do anything that doesn't have failure as a part of it. And so I want the listener to really internalize that. And André, if you could talk directly to the listener and they're sitting there saying, okay, I'm in, I get it. What can I do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start moving towards my goals? If you could talk to them and they're facing adversity of their own or failure or setbacks, what action can they take in the next 24 to 48 hours?
Well, I think, first of all, something you can try thinking about right now. I mean, I've been in the place, if I'm running from everything, it's from not finishing stuff or not starting stuff. You're talking myself out of good ideas. And like, I've been there where I want to go do something and I just can't seem to get myself to go do it. I think really realizing that it is possible. And once you're going and moving towards it, like it's such a great feeling. And then accomplishing it is, it's the most satisfying part of taking on those things. And then all the stories and the recounts and like the most challenging, shitty parts of it are the best parts of it, like in hindsight, looking back, like that's what all the good stories are about. And you can really enjoy them on the back end. But, getting that first step towards it and committing, and being consistent and all of those things are really difficult. And I think when I've done my best, work, it's really to just come up with, like, I try not to overcrowd myself. It could be just like the one thing to accomplish tomorrow, but just writing it down and kind of being accountable. It's one thing to say, oh, I want to start going to the gym, and then, it's 2 weeks later and you still haven't gone. But if you really schedule it out, 7:30 a.m. I'm in the gym, at least what you're not doing. And then, the second time you can try a little technique, but take those on as challenges. Then tomorrow, instead of what didn't work today, I'm going to get the clothes right by the door, set it all up, do whatever it takes. But just writing down those little goals, because the big challenges, I would say the challenging thing about big challenges, this is going to sound like something I came up with previously, but I didn't. The small challenges, every day, that's the hard part.
Yeah. Well said.
I said, like, an Ironman is not that hard. It's like all the training that goes into the Ironman. That's really the difficult part. That's what sets you to do one.
It's waking up early. It's getting on the bike in the morning. It's doing the swims. It's all the things that go into it. Yeah. I believe that.
It's so bad in front of those things and so good on the other side of them. And I think that's typical of a lot of challenges.
Man, André, this has been amazing. Can you take a minute to promote yourself? Where can we find you, follow you, learn more about you?
Sure. I'd say the most sort of posting that I do is on Instagram. You can basically find me everywhere with my name. It's AndreKajlich. That's my handle everywhere. It's my website. Just Google André Handcycle should work too.
All right, excellent. So, André, we will find you. And for the listener, I'll have links to everything we just talked about, as well as a lot of the quotes and stories and a synopsis here written right up in the action plan. So just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. You'll have links to all of his social media, his website, as well as a lot of the quotes and tips and tactics that came out of this. So, André, thank you so much for making time to come on the show.
Wow, thank you, Jim. Yeah, I love the show. And listeners, just, put what Jim is sharing in practice. That's really what you need to do.
Yep. Amen. You said it. That's what it comes down to. What's that one first step? So excellent. For the listener, as always, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.